Well, welcome back to Mr. Obsolete's Vintage Homesteading. Today I'm going to be talking about kerosene lanterns. This will be the first video on lanterns. We're going to be doing, like I say, kerosene. Another video we'll be doing on gas lanterns, run on white gas like Coleman's and AGM's and others. And then the third video we'll do will be on gas-powered stoves that also use white gas. So anyway, what we have in front of me here is the three basic types of lanterns, and kerosene lanterns in particular. So this one is a railroad lantern, and it is what they call a no blast or zero blast. And what that means is that air is drawn in here, comes up through and exits. Here is the exhaust. And these don't put out very much light, but they burn for an exceptionally long time. And so the company here, this is an Adlake, and it's branded for the Northern Pacific Railroad here in the Northwest. And they started in 1857, and they've been around all this time. They're still in business today. These are still used, or some types are used by the railroad still, but most of them are just for decoration in people's homes. So anyway, the second lantern, this is what's called a hot blast. And they've been making these for 1880s, I believe, and still in production today. And what they do to make it what's called a hot blast is the air is drawn in here up around the wick and whatnot, and you'll see these tubes here. And so as the exhaust comes out here, this tube in the center is hollow, and some of the unburnt fuel air mixture drawn in and it's pulled down because of the draft and comes up and is reburnt inside the lamp. And what that does, makes them burn clean. And these were state of the art back in the early days, and what they did is you could use these in a shed or a small barn or something like that, because as it reburns the fuel, it burns a lot cleaner, and it doesn't have the bad smell so much of the kerosene. The bad part of it is it doesn't put out that much light. This particular one here and this one put out what they call 5 candle power. They used to have a standard size candle to measure a certain amount of light. And so anyway, like I say, the ideal situation was to burn it cleaner and burns a long time. And the third one here, this is our Embury. This is what's called a cold blast. You can see it has the tubes here also. And as the draft comes in from burning and comes up, it gets caught in this outer area here. And then as the vacuum from the heat rising and stuff pulls the colder air in down to the bottom, and they burn a lot brighter. And they also burn pretty clean, but not as clean as this style here, the hot blast. But kerosene is kind of an interesting fuel. You know, it's always been cheaper than gasoline. And the thing that I always got a kick out of is in the old Wild West movies, all the bad guys were always taking the lanterns and throwing them on the houses or in the barn and burning everything to the ground right away. Well, it's mostly BS, and I'll show you why. Now there's two types of fuels that they use. Kerosene was most common, and what they have now is lamp oil, and lamp oil is based on paraffin, which is liquid petroleum, and they also make it in that's based on oil base instead of a wax base. But I've got kerosene here and lamp oil here. And so I'll show you what happens and why the movies are full of BS. Completely goes out. And the reason for that is that how these lanterns work, the liquid fuel itself isn't very flammable, in fact almost not flammable, but when you have a wick, a cotton wick in the lantern that you light, and so when you run it up enough to light it, it actually burns the cotton, and then since it's saturated with the kerosene, as the kerosene is drawn up from capillary action, it's just like a towel, or a paper towel, or a cotton towel, or something like that. If you take a bath and you're all wet and you wipe yourself down, it sucks all the moisture off. Well, the same thing as a wick, it just draws in the kerosene. So once the kerosene is there and the heat from the wick burning slightly, it'll actually ignite the kerosene, and there's where you get your main light from. And these lanterns like this, they'll burn for usually up to about 25 to 30 hours on a tank full. This Embury has a great big tank, and this one is more like the standard one. So anyway, the company that's still making these lamps is a Dietz Corporation, and let me get my notes here. Dietz started in 1840, and they're still in business today, although the lamps are not made in the US and haven't been for quite a while, but they're still the exact same lamps. They came out with a hot blast, but it was one of the earliest styles, and this is a brand new one, so been made for all these years. Now the Embury company here, they were another major supplier, and the cold blast lanterns became the ones that were mostly used. And what happened with these is, as lanterns became less and less used, Dietz Corporation here bought most of them out, and the Embury started out in 1908, and they sold out to Dietz in 1953. This lantern today is made by Dietz also. It's called an air pilot, just like this one. Paull's lantern here, this is kind of a neat piece. They started out in 1897. They sold out in 1946 to Dietz again. But you just talk about the features a little bit here. Get these out of the way. So most commonly these have a lever built onto them here. And when you want to light them, you push this down, lifts the globe and that up, and you have access to the wick right here, so you can just reach in and light it. And this is the most common style. Side here. This is the same way, reach in here and light it. There's a lock on it there. Okay, well this Paull's lantern is kind of neat because you have your typical lever. The other lanterns here, you push them down. This one you lift up. And not only does the globe come up, but it goes back. And so you have really good access, and then you reach here on your wheel and then light it, and then you push this back down. So, they're all basically the same, but there was a whole lot of little innovations over the years that changed them, and like that one is the easiest to light of all. This one, you have to clip and it takes off the top here, and then you can reach down and light it, so it's more difficult. But these were designed so that if they tipped over or something like that, they would just go out. Nothing would happen. So one last thing I was going to talk about here. How many of you are old enough to remember these? This is what they used to use along construction sites and road sites and stuff where they needed to warn people to stay away. They put up wooden barriers and light these. They're kerosene. And they're made so that they right themselves, so they got a big heavy bottom piece on them here. The way the top is made here, the wind can't really blow them out unless it's a tornado or something. And battery technology just wasn't good enough, and so they used these for years and years. And to put them out, you just have a little cone you put over here that snuffs out the oxygen. This one, to light it, is real simple. There's your wick. It just sits in there and the cap holds it down. Just pull it off, fill it with kerosene. Put the top back in and light it, and there you go. So anyway, like I say, we're going to be talking about other styles of lamps and lanterns and stoves here before long. But since we're talking about getting ready for the cold weather, so we're going to have something real special for Vintage BS at the end of the video here. So we'll come back tonight when it's dark and light these and take some shots of that too. But for Vintage BS, we got something really unusual. It's related to the cold weather. Well, I want to talk a little bit about maintenance and repairs on these. There isn't much to them, so the main thing is the wick. Here's an old wick here, a short one, and I took it out because up here the kerosene had dried out and it was hard and it wouldn't operate, wouldn't go up and down. The little teeth that run it up and down, it was just too stiff, so I cut it off. But anyway, different lanterns use different sizes of wicks, and small ones like this and small lanterns usually put out about 2 to 3 candle power, which is mostly just for decoration. And this is wider yet, and you could have a lamp at a table or something like that. You'd see enough to eat or something like that, but still pretty poor. And then the wider ones like this, they put out about 12 candle power, so for lanterns like these, that's about the max. But they used to use them in barns and sheds and whatnot for milking and working in there. So anyway, on the wicks, they burn on the ends eventually because the kerosene is not flammable in a liquid state, or lamp oil, either one. It has to be a vapor. And so when you light these, you're actually burning this cotton top here, and then the fluid oil is soaked in here and is drawn up, and as it gets close to the flame, it vaporizes, and that's what gives you your light. So if you have an old lantern and you need to install a new wick, there are a couple of things to do. So they're straight cut like this at the top and go down. So what I do when I replace them, I cut the top square, because as they come, they're kind of frayed, machine cut, and there's stuff will come off them, and it makes it virtually impossible to run it through the part here that has the gear drive in it to run the wick up and down. And so what I do is I cut them at about a 45-degree angle at the top, and then cut a fresh surface across the top here. So on this one, you can see that it's all crooked and a few threads are sticking out. So use the right tool here. You want to have really sharp, so you get a nice clean cut just like that. And then you go in from the bottom to the top of the burner assembly, and it'll go right in. And then the other thing, when you have a tapered edge like this, when you first light it, it makes the flame in a nice triangular shape. So it makes it easy to install and makes a nice perfect flame besides. So anyway, we'll show you how we light them. We'll do this one here, the railroad lantern, first, because it's the easiest to see. I know, I gotta use this crummy lighter. I can't find the long matches like I used to use on these and my Coleman lanterns and AGM lanterns, but sometimes you just have to go with what you got. Now this has a latch on it, right here. So we push that in, and the top comes up, and you can lift off the globe here. And you look down inside here and you can see the burner, and then when you turn the knob here, or lever in this case, you can see the wick comes up. And I don't think you can see it on the camera, but it's totally saturated. That's what you want. So we'll leave it sticking out about 1/8 of an inch. And we'll light it. And then let it get lit all the way across. Now you can see it's smoking because it's got too much fuel, so turn it down until you get just a regular flame. You can quickly set the globe on here because the flame isn't very hot. And there we go. And then, like I say, the cold blast, or this isn't a cold blast, this is a zero blast, so these don't have much of a flame or a light output. That's about the max right there. If I go more, it's going to start smoking. You can see the smoke coming out of the stack here, the chimney. So you run it down until it quits smoking and get the most light, which is right about there. Then to turn it out, you just run it down until it just smothers itself out. So they all basically have the same type of a system on it. You have a lever on the regular lanterns here to raise it. This comes up the chimney here. And then the burner's right here, and then you just roll the wick up again and light it. And this one is an interesting feature which I showed earlier. So when you lift it up, the globe actually goes off to the side, so you have a really nice access to the wick here, so you can reach in there and light it. See how easy that was? And then you can adjust your flame. Get your best light output. So anyway, remember the kerosene and the lamp oil is not very volatile in the liquid form. So watch the rest of the video. Well, for this vintage BS, where's the snow? This is our 1979 Chrysler Sno-Runner. It has a small track in the back and a ski in the front. Watching our exciting videos here. Vintage is always best, and we'll see you soon.